And welcome back to the JoCo Forge. It's been a minute. Recording is significantly harder when we are on spring break, which even though this year of 2025 we have seemed to not have school, it's even harder when we had the kids home here for the last 10 days, and so didn't have a lot of time to record or kind of write down notes on things that would be good to talk about. So just been kind of hanging with the kids or doing work. So hopefully you all had any of you in Blue Valley had a good break. I think Shawnee Mission was on break as well. And we can kind of get back to the routine here soon. So a couple things I've been noticing. There've been a lot of talk the last 2 or 3 weeks, especially about the Tate brothers. And I just find that interesting because I think when I've talked about on this and when I hear others talk about masculinity, some people will bring up the Tate brothers and some folks like that as examples of toxic masculinity. And they're probably right. I don't necessarily like their form of quote unquote masculinity. They're a response to the over feminization of men that is inherent, and they're probably what prior to Christianity coming to be in the Old Testament and New Testament, they're probably what masculinity was generally known to be to most of humankind, whereas Christianity kind of turned that on its head and kind of refocused that to what we would talk about on this, which is true masculinity, which is not sleeping around, if you will, but having a wife and being devoted to that one wife, having a family and being devoted to that family, versus kind of what they are, which is just again it's a perverted or ancient almost type of masculinity that is definitely not godly, and I think leads to anything. Now, some people will point to in the Bible there are examples of different leaders within Judaism that had more than one wife and harems and whatnot. But all of those examples end badly, and that's just proof that is not the model that is made for us. And true masculinity is being devoted to protecting your wife and protecting your family and taking care of your family. It's not just going out and doing these quote unquote hyper masculine things, which again I think are perversions. And so that was one thing I've noticed. I think the Tate brothers moved to Florida, got in trouble, and there's just been a lot of back and forth on people denouncing the Tate brothers, or you should support the Tate brothers and they're actually fine. I generally think they're kind of gross, but I also don't think you should make everyone denounce things, just like the whole Christ is King thing that a handful of, I think they're called groypers, kind of latched onto. But we as Christians are, and if you're not a Christian, Christians are called to acknowledge Christ as King because he is. And it's regardless if some people use certain terms to mean bad things, that doesn't necessarily mean they're all bad things. And truth is still truth, and we should inherently try to stick to that. Another thing I noticed, I saw Gene Hackman died, which he's had a ton of great movies. Probably one of my favorites was Hoosiers. Just as a kid growing up, a huge basketball fan. It was probably my second favorite basketball movie. We grew up, ironically, as farm kids liking Above the Rim a lot, but Hoosiers obviously kind of was made for that kind of David and Goliath type perspective and kind of small town versus big town type thing, and definitely was very true to all of us, and was again, he was a great actor. But one thing I noticed was I believe he isn't passing off his inheritance to his kids, which I think is I don't think it is very masculine. I think I think we as Christian men, especially, we're put on this earth to, like we've talked about, build, bring order and things like that. But we're also called to hand those things to our family and hand it down through generations. And if you're simply just giving it to the world, if you will, it's a very communist idea. You should be trying to build up your children and their spouses to make the world a better place, and you are trying to make their lives better so that they can take what you have done and make that life better. And it's really something that I think people misunderstood about the commandment about honoring your parents. The biggest thing about that is just bringing honor to your family, right? And trying to promote your doing right by your family. But that's not just from the kids' perspective. Your parents should also honor your kids, and I think it is. We are called to, and our kids aren't going to be perfect. Our kids may not make the right choices a lot of times, or all the time, or whatever. But regardless, we're called as men, especially, but women too, to guide our children but also help them promote the next generation after we're gone and continue on that path. And if you're just giving it back to the state, we all know how that ends. It ends with chaos and kind of anti-Christianity, which we've seen a lot of now. Whereas if you're promoting your actual flesh and blood, I think that's really important to do, and to grow Christianity as a society. Hopefully we're discussing and trying to make things back in its proper order. And I think part of that is actually just making sure we take care of those kids after we're passed and help them use what we've built, hopefully, to build things more themselves and with their families. So I thought it's a trend I've seen a ton of people talk about especially in Hollywood, but I think you see it throughout society, where people have much less that family-oriented perspective and much more of a, like I said, a communist type perspective. And it's one thing if you don't have family and you're giving it to your small community or something like that, that is something you're connected to. But it's another thing if you're giving it to the state or some abstract charity or things like that maybe you're not as involved in. I just don't think that's good or helpful for society, and it's not what I think any of us should be striving to do as parents of children. I think, like we talked about originally, this podcast was intended to talk about local politics and things like that. But one thing, and I haven't had a ton of time to look at them, I did see something of Governor Kelly allowing a black mass, which I think is like a satanic ritual at the Capitol. Yeah, I think it's this week, the 27th or somewhere thereabouts, which is really disappointing. I think you saw some of this with someone in Iowa putting up a satanic symbol or something in the state capitol there, and somebody tearing it down. I also just think, I think a lot of people have misunderstood the First Amendment because it kind of got misinterpreted back. I believe it was FDR's judges that did it. It talks about no religion, but that's on the federal level. Originally, the states almost all had a state religion, and thus there is a place for religion in our states, not necessarily in the federal government, although there's a place for it there too. It's just you can't be chosen, I believe, for federal seats based on your religion or something to that extent. But states definitely had a stated religion, and Christianity was basically it. Again, we're a Christian country. We were founded on that. Our states were founded generally as different versions of Protestant or Catholic type states, and we've kind of lost that. And so it's really disappointing, especially in a conservative state like Kansas, to see that allowed, because there are different flavors of Christianity, whether it be Protestantism or Orthodoxy, Catholicism, or others. But I don't think we should be allowing these religions to practice that are completely antithetical to what we believe. And they definitely shouldn't be allowed to do that on state grounds, because to a certain extent that's still our, again, we're a Christian society. Kansas is a Christian state, regardless of what people may think of it now. And it's disappointing that, again, we're allowing this, and it's a chaotic thing. It's really bad when you start to kind of learn about the spiritual realm and letting those things in, when it's being promoted in our state capital. So that was really disappointing. Hopefully in a couple of years we can get an actual conservative in the governorship to prevent that. I don't know that the legislature has the power to do it. I know they've been fighting back against it. But again, these are why, while a lot of our churches don't want to get involved in politics, it's why it's important for them to still have a little bit of a voice on those things. We don't need to be preaching, Republican politics from the pulpit every single Sunday, but churches should have something to say about this stuff, because it's really, it's literally satanic. It's antithetical to Christianity. And if you think Christianity is the way that I think Christians do, otherwise you wouldn't be a Christian, you shouldn't be allowing these things in our state to essentially, they're summoning demons or trying to. And those type of things aren't good for our society. I did see something else in property tax relief. It's property tax. It's more of less of a masculine thing. It's frustrating when you own a property and you never own a property, because you have to pay the state to own it on an ongoing basis. And if you ever don't pay the state, you go to jail. So that's not real ownership. It will be interesting, because I think ultimately you will start to see property values start to decrease in the next coming years, just because of remigration of immigrants and things like that are going to normalize those things. And so we've seen with the growth in property values, we've kind of seen a lot of those become very frustrated with the growing values of their property as it pertains to taxes, but eventually that's going to start correcting itself, and it probably will create a lot of issues for like Johnson County and things like that, because a lot of their revenue comes from those property taxes, and as you start to see a reduction in those, they may try to raise their mill rate or things like that. So that was just something. Hopefully we as a family definitely enjoy getting to pop culture. We definitely enjoy the NCAA tournament. Iowa just named his basketball coach, so I'm pretty excited about that. He seems like a great guy. But this time of year, just as far as entertainment goes, it's great, even though this tournament hasn't been as much of one with giant upsets. I just enjoy watching the games and the intensity, and hopefully you are too. Which reminds me of one other thing. Trump, I did see he went to the National NCAA Wrestling Championships, which I think it comes back to this, and maybe he'll go to basketball too. He seems to like to go to all these events, so I wouldn't be surprised if he goes to the Final Four for basketball. But wrestling is definitely, it was never my cup of tea, but it's definitely a very masculine sport. And if you know anything about it, and it is just a grueling sport, and it is extremely hard. I did it when I was very little and preferred basketball, so I ended up a basketball player. But just Trump going to the NCAA wrestling, and I saw a couple of the wrestlers kind of embrace him. There's no more hyper masculine, and again, it probably gets a little overboard, a realm. And I think it comes back to, I do think, regardless of some of the things that you may agree or disagree with Trump, I think he really has embraced that our society needs a masculine presence, and is trying to go and attend things and be around that type of environment and really promote that in our society. And again, wrestling's not my thing, but it is just going to battle one-on-one is a very masculine thing. And I think Trump embracing that was a good thing from his perspective, but it's also, it brings those sports that maybe are less popular, but do provide masculine outlets to light. And so that's really good. So that's all I have. It's a shorter podcast. Had a little bit less time to accumulate my notes and kind of bring this back to some of the masculinity stuff I've been working on. But hopefully you enjoyed it, and hopefully we can get another podcast out here and get back on the train again. So let's make dudes great again in Johnson County, and have a great day.